We always have that opportunity to choose again. And sometimes it happens in the heat of the moment. We might even catch ourselves as we start to lash out or slam the door or withdraw. I can notice it, I can catch myself, and then I can reintegrate in that moment and do something different. I can apologize right then and there, or I can just change my energy right then and there. We have choice, we have agency. We do not have to keep doing these same things over and over, but it does take interrupting the cycle. It does take consciously choosing to apologize and to repair and to choose again and again and again. Oh my gosh, it's such a journey. I've said this a lot of times, but our children are our biggest teachers because they bring these things to the surface that we probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together. Hey everyone, welcome back into the Parents and Teens Rising podcast. I am so glad you're here, and if you're new, welcome in. We are so happy to have you. You picked a good one to start with today because we are going to get into something that I think can really shift how you see your role as a parent and how you see yourself. So today's episode is called Your Parenting Teens Strategy 101, Creating the Ecosystem Your Teen Needs to Thrive. So I want you to sit with that word for just a second. Ecosystem. An ecosystem is the living, breathing environment you create every single day in your home, which is made up of all the moving parts that either help your teen grow into who they're meant to be or can get in the way of it. And by the end of this episode, I think that's going to make a lot of sense. So I've got 7 points to cover with you today, and this isn't going to just be about parenting strategies or tactics. A big piece of what we're going to be talking about is you. Your nervous system, your emotional world, and how you show up in your own body, because all of that directly shapes the environment that your teen is growing up in. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I can't wait to jump in. Okay, so for our first point, we're going to be talking about shifting the way you see your role as a parent. What I want you to understand here is that you're not here to sculpt your teen into a finished product. You're actually here to create the environment and conditions that they can grow and thrive in. So most of us grew up with a parenting model that was all about shaping and directing and correcting. And that comes from a good place because when you love your kid the way you love your kid, you want to get it right. And I 100% relate to that. But what the research keeps showing us, and what I've seen over and over with real families, is that teens don't thrive under constant direction. They thrive when there's fertile ground underneath them. So think about it this way. If your teenager comes home from school and something went wrong that day, maybe they failed a test or had a fallout with a friend, the way you respond in that moment is either creating safety or creating shutdown. So if they walk in and sense that you're stressed and distracted, or that any bad news is going to send you into fix-it mode, or worse, lecture mode, they're going to stop bringing things to you. But if they've learned over time that home is a place where they can land and where they don't have to have it all together, that's when they start to open up. And that's the ecosystem at work. So what does creating that environment actually look like day to day? This can be your mood when you walk through the door. It's your presence at dinner. It's the way you respond when they mess up. It's whether there's enough safety and predictability in your home for them to take risks, make mistakes, and still feel like they belong. All of it is contributing to that soil. You're the environment your teenager lives inside every single day. And that can be really empowering if you really think about it, because that means we have a lot of agency here. Moving into point 2, I want to talk about how your nervous system is basically the weather in your home. Teens are incredibly attuned to the emotional state of their parents, way more than most of us realize. There is a concept called co-regulation, and what it means is that our nervous systems are actually in constant communication with the nervous systems of the people around us. We're wired for this as humans. So when you're regulated, calm, and grounded, that state is contagious. It creates more safety and calm in the people around you, including your teenager. And when you're dysregulated, stressed, or running on empty, that's contagious too. So basically, your nervous system and your teen's nervous system are always in conversation with each other, whether you're aware of it or not. So here's what this can look like in real life. Maybe you've had a brutal day at work and you're feeling depleted and overwhelmed, and you walk in the door carrying all of that with you without even realizing it. And then your teenager takes one look at you or just feels the energy in the room, and they make a decision in about 2 seconds flat that now is not the time to talk to you. So they might retreat to their room, and you might interpret that as them being distant or difficult. And suddenly there's this disconnection between you that neither of you actually chose. And that's how your nervous system is setting the weather in your home every day. So it's really worth asking yourself, what is my personal weather report right now? So I'm not asking that to add pressure or guilt. I'm asking it because it's such useful information. And when we start to have awareness about what's happening inside, we can have, again, agency over the choices we make and over our responses to situations. And we can choose again, right? We can choose the thoughts we're thinking in that moment. We can choose whether we take a pause in that moment. We can recalibrate, we can reset, but it starts with awareness. So when you notice your chest is tight or your jaw is clenched or you're answering in short, snappy sentences because you're about to lose it, that is not a parenting failure. It's just data. It's your nervous system letting you know it needs something right now. So whatever that might be, it might be a glass of water, it might be a hug, it might be some fresh air, it might be some breaths. But just paying attention and noticing, what do I need right now so that I can reset, recalibrate, and be present in the way that I want to be present right now in this moment. So the good news is that simple reset tools work. So things like breath work, affirmations, stepping outside for 2 minutes, putting your hand on your heart, and grounding your feet flat on the floor or into the dirt, that can make a real difference. These are not big dramatic interventions. They're just small little resets that we can use on a regular basis to come back to our center so that we can show up for the conversations that need to happen. We can show up with the energy that we want to bring, the presence that we want to bring when our kid walks back in the door from a long day at their school or from their baseball practice or whatever it might be, right? How do we want to be in that moment? We get to decide if we have awareness and if we can take that pause and do those resets for ourselves. All right, and that's going to move us into point 3, which is something I think a lot of us feel but don't always talk about openly. And that's the generational patterns that we've inherited from our own parents that we swore we'd never repeat and yet somehow find ourselves doing anyway. So maybe you grew up in a home where conflict meant someone going completely silent for days, or where anger showed up loudly and without much warning, or where guilt was the primary tool used to get people to behave. And those patterns get wired into us early, and they don't just disappear because we're aware of them or because we love our kids and want to do better. They live in our bodies, and under enough stress, they come back out. And so what this can look like is that you and your teenager might get into a disagreement, and instead of working through it, you find yourself going cold and pulling away or giving them the silent treatment without even making a conscious decision to do it. Or maybe the anger that comes out of you in a heated moment sounds a lot like a voice from your own childhood. And that realization hits you sometimes after the fact, and it doesn't feel great. And these are not character flaws. They are inherited survival strategies that made sense in the environment that you grew up in. And they're patterns that can be changed with the right awareness and support. You know, our brains are plastic. Our brains are malleable. We can change old patterns, but it starts by noticing them, bringing awareness to them, and consciously choosing again each and every time when we catch ourselves. And believe me, this is something that I've had to reprogram in my own self. I absolutely repeated the patterns that I was raised with that were harming to my kids, that harmed me. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I didn't even realize they were things I had picked up when I was a kid until I had a conversation with my brother many years ago, and we were able to like identify some of those things that happened in our upbringing that we were now bringing forward with our own kids. And just having that conversation and that willingness to look at myself and the things that I was carrying forward that I didn't want to carry forward. That was the first step. And then I could start to catch myself and to notice it and to, like I said, choose again, right? We always have that opportunity to choose again. And sometimes it happens in the heat of the moment. We might even catch ourselves as we start to lash out or slam the door or withdraw. I can notice it, I can catch myself, and then I can reintegrate in that moment and do something different. I can apologize right then and there, or I can just change my energy right then and there. We have choice. We have agency. We do not have to keep doing these same things over and over, but it does take interrupting the cycle. It does take consciously choosing to catch ourselves and to apologize and to repair and to choose again and again and again. Oh my gosh, it's such a journey. I've said this a lot of times, but our children are our biggest teachers because they bring these things to the surface that we probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. And that's how it was for me. I didn't see these patterns in myself with my husband or with my friends. They only came out when I became a mother. And so if that's true for you, I would invite the idea that this is an opportunity for growth, that we can actually use this to expand ourselves and to change these patterns that we've been holding on to and to do our own healing journey and our own healing work around these things that were harmful for us too, right? If we think about, healing that inner child wound, right? We've got lots of them, right? We have the mother wound and the father wound and all of these wounds that we carry. And it does take us taking a look at these things and talking about them and working through them, journaling about them, going to therapy about them, whatever we need to do to heal our own selves so that we can stop these patterns right here and now and do something different. And it doesn't matter if you already have a teenager and you have been replaying these patterns up until this point. That's okay. It's not too late. It's not too late if you have a young adult. It's never too late to start bringing more awareness and to start changing patterns. There used to be a lot of science and belief and research around the fact that, once your brain was, into its adult years, like it couldn't change anymore. And so that's where you get the phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But what neuroscience tells us now is that that's actually not true. Our brains can be changed all the way to the end of life. But it takes, first of all, noticing a pattern that we want to change and then starting to insert new habits and putting in those reps so that we create the new pathways in our brain. It's work. It is hard work, but it's so worth it. When we do this work to change these patterns, we open the doorway for a kind of connection that our parents never had with us, right? Maybe they did. Maybe you came from a home where you had an amazing connection with one or both of your parents. And if that's so, that's amazing, beautiful. You have less work to do than the rest of us, okay? And for most of us, it was somewhere in between where we had loving parents, but they also had a lot of patterns and habits that they picked up from their parents that they carried forward. So it wasn't malicious or anything like that, but patterns get passed down from generation to generation. And if we want that cycle to stop, we have to be conscious about it and we have to make that choice. So the question that I think is worth sitting with is this: which patterns do you want to carry forward into the relationship with your teen? And which ones do you want to have stop with you? Because the beautiful thing about parenting teenagers is that it's not too late to do that work. When you start to notice a pattern, you can name it and you can choose a different response, even if it's imperfect. And when you do that, you're not just changing your relationship with your teen, you're shifting something that may have been running in your family for generations down the line. And how cool is that, right? That you get to do it differently, that your grandkids get to have a different experience because of the work you're doing with your teenager right now. That is a gift that keeps on giving. All right, point 4 is about something that I think gets overlooked in a lot of parenting conversations, and it's the idea that connection has to come before correction. So, rules without relationship breed rebellion. And if you've got a teenager, you've probably already seen this play out over and over again. You can have every boundary, every consequence, and every expectation crystal clear. But if the connection isn't strong underneath it, those rules will not hold. Teens follow the lead of people they feel connected to. And that is not a flaw in your teenager. That's just how humans are wired. So, what does connection actually look like day to day? It is asking about something they care about, even when you don't fully understand it. It's sitting nearby them when they're doing their thing without saying a word. Or it could be leading with curiosity after a blow up instead of jumping straight into another lecture. Or it could be just showing up consistently enough that they know you're on their side even when you're holding a hard limit. So here's a scenario that might sound familiar. Your teenager has been pulling away lately and giving you one-word answers and spending most of their time in their room. And so your instinct might be to push harder, to ask more questions, or to address the behavior or the distance directly. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in that moment is to just show up without an agenda. Maybe knock on their door and ask if they want a snack. Sit on the couch near them while they watch something they're into, even if it's not your thing. Or send a text that's just funny or kind with no strings attached. Connection doesn't always look like a big, meaningful conversation. Sometimes it's just a series of small moments that say, hey, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And when you get the eye rolls and the door slams and the silence, which you will, just try to remember that those things don't mean your teenager doesn't need you or doesn't love you. It usually means the opposite. And staying consistent and warm through that phase is one of the most important things you can do. Think about the long game, right? This is a storm. This is a stormy time. There's ups and downs, there's highs and lows. It's a roller coaster. But the long view here, right? They're going through their adolescent phase right now where there's going to be big emotions. There's going to be big reactions. There's going to be, mistakes. There's going to be a lack of impulse control. There's going to be things that you wish they had done differently. There's going to be interactions that feel really hard. But if we stay steady, if we remember that they're in this big developmental stage of life, right? And that they're going to make it through this phase and they're going to be on the other side at some point, back to their irrational selves, back to, this person that they're becoming. We just hold steady, hold the line through the process, and know that everything is okay. We're just going to be here. We're just going to show up. We're just going to keep being that steady, solid force that is always seeking more opportunities to connect with them. Okay, so let's move into point 5. And this one is something that I see trip up even the most self-aware parents, and that's fear about the future. So when your teenager is struggling with their grades and navigating a friendship fallout or making choices that worry you, it's so easy to start projecting forward and catastrophizing about what it all means for their future. And that fear comes from love, right? So much love. We care so deeply about our kids and who they're becoming and what their life is going to look like. And that's not the problem, right? That's normal. The problem is when that anxiety starts driving our parenting, because when it does, it changes the way we show up in ways that we might not even notice. So here's what this might look like. Maybe your teenager is in 10th grade, for example, and their grades have slipped. And instead of one conversation about it, it becomes the undercurrent of every interaction. So you're asking about homework at dinner and you're following up before bed and you're sending articles about study habits and bringing it up on the drive to school, micromanaging their every move. And you think you're helping and your intentions are good, but what your teenager is feeling is that your love and your approval are somehow tied to their performance. So they start to shut down around you, not because they don't care about their grades, but because every interaction with you has started to feel like pressure. And the anxiety you felt about their future has now created the very distance that makes it harder for them to come to you when they actually need help. And often it breeds their own anxiety, right? So if we're talking about co-regulation, we're talking about the fact that our nervous systems really communicate with each other. When you as the parent are feeling anxiety all the time about your kid and about their future, they feel that anxiety and they become more anxious and worried about themselves and their future, right? We want to have faith and trust that they are right on track and that everything is good. And that's what we want to impart to them. That's what we want to show them in our actions and in our energy, right? That you're good. It's okay. You got a bad grade. We can figure this out, right? This is not the end of the world. There's a lot of other opportunities where we can get a better grade next time. What supports might you need? How would you like me to help you right now, right? Versus, this micromanaging, like, oh my God, how did this happen? Let's fix this right now, right? It's a much different energy when we just come with that calm support versus that need to micromanage and fix and solve. So learning to tolerate uncertainty is one of the most powerful skills you can develop as a parent of a teenager. And it's a real skill that takes real practice, like all the things, right? It means staying present and grounded, even when things aren't going the way that we had hoped, and trusting that our teenagers are in a process rather than treating them like a finished product who's already behind schedule. So showing up from a calm and steady place instead of a worried and urgent one doesn't mean that you've stopped caring. It just means your teen gets to feel your support instead of your fear. And that makes all the difference in whether they let you in. All right, so let's move into point 6. I think this one is a really important thing to talk about because often we think that we have to choose between being our kid's friend and our kid's parent. But I believe that there is a whole third option that most people never talk about. So the conversation around parenting teens gets framed as a binary. So either you're the fun, permissive parent who's basically a peer, or you're the firm, distant authority figure who's respected but not really known. And that whole framework deserves to be thrown out the window because the most thriving parent-teen relationships I see live somewhere completely different. So what it looks like is this. You hold real guardrails, you set boundaries, you model what it means to be a good human, and you don't let things slide just because it'd be easier. But at the same time, you're genuinely fun to be around. You're silly at dinner. You're interested in what they're interested in, even when you don't fully understand it. And you treat their opinions with real respect. And then you also just laugh together a lot. Okay? So that combination is really rare. But when a teenager has it, they lean in. They come to you. They feel safe enough to share things with you because you've shown them that you can hold both, the love and the limit, the laughter and the boundary. That is the sweet spot, and it's absolutely available to you. All right, let's move into our final point of the day. And this is one that I hope you can carry with you for a long time after this episode is over. And it's this. You are allowed to be an imperfect parent. In fact, your imperfection and what you do with it might be one of the most important things you offer your teenager. So there is a myth in parenting culture that getting it right means getting it right all the time. And that myth is not only exhausting, but it's also just not how attachment works. So a developmental psychologist named Dr. Ed Tronick spent years researching the relationship between parents and children. And what he found was fascinating. It's not the absence of mistakes that creates a secure and trusting relationship. It's the willingness to come back after the mistakes and repair. He found that parents and children are actually out of sync with each other more often than they're in sync, and that the repair of those moments of disconnection is what builds genuine resilience and trust over time. Dr. Dan Siegel's research on the teenage brain supports this too, showing that adolescents who experience consistent rupture and repair with their parents develop stronger emotional regulation and a more secure sense of self than those who grow up in homes where conflict is either avoided or never resolved. So what does this look like in practice? Maybe you lose your cool during an argument and say something harsher than you meant to. Instead of moving past it and hoping everyone forgets, you go back to your teenager later and say that you got that wrong and that they didn't deserve to be spoken that way. That moment of repair does two things at once. It heals the relationship and it teaches your teenager something they will use for the rest of their life, which is how to be accountable without falling apart over it. You're modeling that mistakes don't have to mean the end of connection, that love is strong enough to survive conflict, and that coming back matters more than being perfect. So give yourself permission to be a human parent raising a human teenager. You're gonna get it wrong sometimes. And when you do, the path forward is not shame or self-criticism. It's repair. Meet yourself with the same compassion you're trying to extend to your kid, because a parent who is kind to themselves raises a teenager who learns to be kind to themselves too. Okay, let's go ahead and move into our wrap-up. We covered a lot of things today about creating the ecosystem that allows your teen and the relationship you have with them to thrive. So let's go ahead and do a quick recap. Point 1, you're the soil, not the sculptor. Your role is to create the conditions for growth, not to control the outcome. Point 2, your nervous system sets the emotional weather in your home. When you regulate yourself, you help your teen regulate too. Point 3, when your teen triggers a really big reaction in you, get curious about where that's actually coming from. Healing your own story creates space for theirs. Point 4, connection before correction. Always. Rules without relationships don't hold. Stay connected even when they push you away. Point 5, learn to tolerate uncertainty. When fear about your teen's future is driving your parenting, it usually creates more distance, not less. So trust the process. Point 6, you don't have to choose between friend and parent. You can hold the guardrails and have a ton of fun with your kid. That combination is where the magic is. And point 7, you're gonna mess up, so will they. What matters is the repair. Be human, be accountable, and be kind to yourself. All right, that's what I have for you today. I hope this felt less like a parenting lecture and more like a conversation with someone who genuinely believes in you and your teen, because I do, and I'm here for you. So if you need more support in this process, as always, reach out. I would love to connect with you. You can join my parent coaching community, Parents of Teens Rising Coaching Circle. It's in the school app. It's so cheap, and it's so packed full of so many tools, so many resources, so many workshops, so many coaching opportunities for you. So you can hop in there to get more support, or you can send me a DM, can schedule a call with me to figure out how we can get some one-on-one parent coaching going, or get your teen set up with coaching, or even send your teen on our upcoming wilderness trip. So reach out for any of those opportunities. And if this episode landed for you, please share it with another parent who needs to hear it. And please also take just a moment to leave a review for me on Apple Podcasts, or to drop 5 stars for me on Spotify. Either is great and so very helpful and appreciated, and it helps more people find this show, which is just another great bonus. So with that, I'll say goodbye for now, and I will see you guys next week. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.